Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 8th of June 2022. These are the stories that we'll be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin with the look at Pakistan's economy vis-a-vis its currency, that is the Pakistani Rupee. We know that the Rupee had lost quite a bit in the last few days, but it has gained this morning as it is trading at 201.4 against the US dollar as we speak this morning in the interbank market. At the same time, what is the market sentiment like as far as Pakistan's economy is concerned, and what incentives are needed in order to further boost Pakistan's economy? The country is, of course, moving in the right direction as far as stabilizing Pakistan's economy is concerned. What are the speculations also as far as the Pakistani currency is concerned? Will it further go down? Will it rebound or not? And what is its impact on the stock market and on Pakistan's economy? We'll be discussing that in detail in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns India. And of course, we've talked about it yesterday also, the two PJB spokespersons who have said, who have taken out statements that are blasphemous in nature against our Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now that different important countries are reacting extremely strongly as to these comments, India has come up with some statements, but is that enough? What more needs to be done? And is the Muslim world finally recognizing the brutalities that India is perpetrating on the Muslims, whether in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir or within India? This is going to be our second segment. So let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns, ladies and gentlemen, the roundup as far as Pakistan's stock market is concerned. What is happening with the Pakistani currency? It's going a little bit up, then it does come down. Will the coming days further stabilize Pakistani Rupee? What is needed? More in the following report.
Pakistan is navigating through difficult economic situation as trade deficit of the country has widened by an alarming 57.85% to an all-time high at $43.33 billion during the first 11 months of 2021 and 22. According to the Forex Association of Pakistan, the rupee was trading at 201.4 against the US dollar in the interbank market. The World Bank has estimated a moderate gross domestic product growth rate for Pakistan standing at 4% for the incoming fiscal year 2022 and 23. The State Bank of Pakistan's total foreign reserves has dropped by $366 million to $9.72 billion due to external debt repayments. Moody's Investors Services, one of the world's top 3 credit rating agencies, has downgraded Pakistan's outlook from stable to negative. According to Moody's assessment, the decision to change the outlook to negative is driven by Pakistan's heightened external vulnerability risk and uncertainty around the sovereign's ability to secure additional external financing to meet its need. In another massive petrol price hike, government increased petrol price to 209.86 rupees per litre, and the development comes as Pakistan has yet to reach a staff-level agreement with the International Monetary Fund. The restoration of Pakistan's delayed IMF program rests on the government's capacity to make fiscal adjustments of about 2.5% of the gross domestic product by increasing revenues and reducing expenditures in the upcoming budget of 2022 and 23.
Now, to discuss this issue in detail, we've been joined by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, who's a former advisor, Ministry of Finance. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to discuss economy with you because you're quite thorough and give both sides of the coin. Let's begin with the rupee. The rupee, Dr. Saab, has been going up, down, and then further down, and today it slightly rose up and was at 204 against the US dollar in interbank market. Is the rupee going to further stabilize, or is there a lot of speculation as to Pakistan's economic stability?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, it's always a pleasure to be, Omar, on your show, and especially on PTV World. Secondly, let me commend PTV on the kind of report that you have just put in. Not only were the facts correct, but the numbers were the appropriate ones that the nation must remember. So on the rupee, because the rupee has a role in our lives. One, I think we have an emotional, sentimental attachment.
Yes, Dr. Saab,
can you hear?
You were saying?
Yeah, so the rupee, we have an emotional or a sentimental attachment to it that we don't want it to slide too much. But what has really happened here is that the uncertainty of the past few months, starting from the political uncertainty, our inability to sign the IMF since February. So the seventh review with the IMF has been pending since February. And even now, when the team went to Doha, though there were positive talks from both sides, there were positive proposals from both sides, but we could not ink a staff level agreement. Thirdly, the rising imports are putting a lot of pressure on the rupee. The government has tried to even ban some and put some RDs, but that's not been enough. Fourthly, the rising need of the economy at a summertime where the demand is hovering anywhere above 26,000 megawatts, has made us import more LNG. And imported fuel is always very expensive now. You will be surprised to know that an LNG cargo today is costing us about $90 million. Just a year or so ago, this cargo was costing 35 to $45 million. So
What do you
prices have.
attribute it to, Dr. Saab? What do you attribute this extreme rise, in fact, double, more than double its original price a year back? What do you attribute it to? The political situation in the region, for example, Ukraine-Russia conflict, or are there other reasons as well?
Absolutely. That's the first reason. Correctly, you've pointed it out. But the other reasons are that the world economy has opened after COVID. There are supply chain constraints, but the demand side is very heavy because people have saved money and not spent. And then there has been an impetus from governments across the world, not only a fiscal impetus where people were given money, but also a monetary impetus where we saw the rates drop to almost zero in the developed world. They have now started rising again to curb demand because in Pakistan the transmission of the monetary rise in the rate of the state bank may not be that quick because the lending may be lower, but where the consumers are heavily borrowed, it has an effect. So as the exogenous, the external circumstances, then rupee deval, this is all added to the pressure on the reserves, which are only $9.7 billion. Now, this is a very important number because our reserves barely cover 1.5 months of imports. So, what has happened is that the importers are flogging to buy dollars. So, this is all the uncertainty on one side, and the importers are flogging to buy dollars for their imports in the future also because of the fact that they think they'd have to pay a higher price. So there is in the interbank, very simply, there is a demand, there is a supply. The supply is coming from the exporters, from the remittances, from the Russian digital accounts, and there are the importers who want to buy dollars. The government wants to buy dollars. Why? Because they want to get the fuels to give you more energy. So in the short run, for the rupee to stabilize, I think two conditions have to be met. One, Pakistan has to go to the IMF so that we can not only get the IMF approval that we are on the right track, but also we must be able to pull in other money, the multilateral, the World Bank, the ADB, the IDB money. Then also the friendly countries have asked you, which is, a little different this time. They have asked you that please get the funds approval before we can go in and whether it's the UAE money, whether it's the KSA money, whether it's the money that we are expecting from Qatar, which will all flow in. But what we can get, and that is where I blame us, our own self, the Chinese money has been hanging in there for about 2, 3 months now. It started in the previous government's time, and still we've not had that. That's $2.3 billion. That money can give you a lot of support and a lot of comfort to the rupee, as well as support in delivering an IMF program, because then the IMF would also deal with you differently because your house would be having more dollars in the kitty.
Dr. Saab, I understand the situation. There are a lot of complexities and twists and turns, and it's quite a vicious circle that you've just described. And all hinges on the IMF giving its nod to Pakistan. Are both sides meeting again in the in the coming days in order to finalize? We've seen that a lot of preconditions have been met with by the government. The petrol rates have been hiked, the subsidy has been lowered. Then we're also hearing about electricity rates as well as gas rates. What do you feel? Doesn't the IMF want this, or does it want even more from Pakistan? Is the requirement hinging a lot on Pakistan's economy, and will it have repercussions on Pakistan's society and rupee indirectly as well?
Omar, you've put it quite rightly that Pakistan's now going to a more stable currency, more stable macro numbers, more stable fiscal number hinges. I used to use the word largely on IMF. Now I'm going to change my stance and say solely on IMF. So, to get IMF, we have on board. What we have done is on the petrol as well as the diesel, but still there are 9 rupees on petrol and there are about 23 rupees on diesel that we still would need to do. This almost would bring us at the cost of sales of the two commodities. But unfortunately, what has happened, I use the word unfortunate for the consumers, because the new NEPRA tariff has come in. This is not an IMF conditionality, but is likely to now become an IMF conditionality, where we are looking at about a 47% rise in the average tariff that NEPRA has suggested. So let's do our homework, see how much of it can be done through a targeted subsidy and what can be passed on to the end consumer. There is a gas issue also that we need to handle. OGRA has come up with a new price. But Umar, your question was even more valid when you said, when are we going to be able to close this? As we move into the budget, inshallah, on the 10th of June, a budget which is going to see fiscal, what we are earning and spending, the gap between that two come down to about 5% of GDP. So, the number would be somewhere in 3,000 billions. Right now, the number is about 5,000 billion. So we reduce what the gap was in FY 2022, which is going to close on the 30th of June, and bring it down. And then IMF will see the measures, the quality of the measures that we have put together to bring this gap to in the 3000s and the fiscal deficit, as we call it, to around 5%. I think this, along with the other aspects that we've talked about on the energy pricing, would seal the deal, so as to say, with the IMF and complete the seventh review. But we must remember that it is still not, we are not home, but we will be home. Because for Pakistan to go out unscathed, right now we need to go to a doctor who treats you in the ICU. And this is not something that one is fond of, but when you have reached a stage where the bleeding is high, this is the only way out. And then let's build the foreign exchange reserves through our friends, through curtailing imports a little bit, but really picking up the exports. I think yesterday also the government was with the private sector, and the emphasis was on one word: let's pick up exports, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in IT or ITES, whether it's increasing our remittances, whether it's increasing our investments. So let's try and do that once we get over this hump kind of a situation where we are, move into stability. And I would suggest to all our viewers that this is the time for them to do conservation. And what I mean is that let's not go out every Sunday. Let's try and stay home on a Saturday and read a book rather than going on even a public transport ride. Let's conserve from 2 air conditioners to 1 air conditioner. Let's take our air conditioners on 28 degrees. Let's shut the lights and use only when we need them. Let's conserve energy as much as we can. Here,
All
the
right, now,
role of
Dr.
the
Saab, a
government.
lot of you talk about the common man and how he needs to bring forth his best game in order to help the country and the country's economy. But does the common man understand that? We know that they are in the plight of saying, oh, the petrol prices have gone so high. The common man on social media platforms is not very happy. But this is a bitter pill that Pakistan needed to take sooner or later. It didn't happen in the previous government. It is now happening. When in fact it should have happened a couple of months back, the increase in the petrol rates. And had the petrol rates increased slowly and steadily over the last few months, maybe the situation would have been different. Does the common man also understand, because you put up some points, does the common man understand how he or she can put in his or her 2 cents into Pakistan's economy and its outlook?
Umar, this is where the role of the government is to create that narrative. And I think that much more can be done by the policymakers, by people like us who advocate this, to go on forums and create this narrative that it is not only you who is suffering, the whole world is paying this price. Even countries like UAE are conserving, countries like the US have gone on to an agenda where they are conserving. The war situation, the global disruption is a large part of what the world is going through. So this narrative, I think, has not been brought home to the people, and which should be. They are only seeing that petrol prices have risen by 60 rupees or so, but what they have not been shown is the pathway, that this is how you can now save on this. Yes, maybe the temperature right now is about 40 degrees, but if we drop it to 25 or 26, there is going to be more load shed. But if we drop it to only 28, your load shedding will reduce all over the country, your dollars will be saved. So here, I completely agree, the role of the advocacy by the government, not only the federal government. Always remember, there are the provincial governments, there are all these people who have to play that role, and PTV should take a lead in this, because I mean, it's a national channel. It has there it is there in urban and rural areas, and as we are talking about it, please conserve your savings, please conserve your money. These 3 to 6 months are going to be tough across the world. They're going to be tough, but the government, on the other hand, should come up with a large income support program. Call it BEST, call it SRs, whatever you want to call it, but with a large social security program targeting 3 key areas. One, the vulnerable who get a direct subsidy, that should jack up. Number two, a subsidy targeted on the petrol and diesel used by a certain sector. And number three, on electricity, so that we can sail through this 6 months. But right now, even when I'm looking at the futures of the oil, they were just they seem to be going up. Please remember, the oil was hovering $70 to $80 a barrel. Today, it's hovering 120. But with the IMF on board, one thing may happen. We may see an downward adjustment of the rupee. Why I say this, and I never comment on the currency, but I think I need to. And the reason is that we are in a market-based exchange rate system. The rupee needs to move both ways. If our fundamentals improve, if our ratings go back to stable on the Moody's as we build our foreign exchange reserves, as the pressure on imports drop, there should be a demand and supply playing the other side, and a market-based exchange rate should show movement towards both sides. And I don't mean a rupee movement, or the meager movement that was shown today. A substantive movement, so that things look that. But for that to happen, we need to get our fundamentals, we need to get our narrative, we need to go to the IMF, get the doctor to start healing, stop our bleeding, and then show an economic plan of privatization, of agriculture productivity, and inshallah, Pakistan will be on the right path.
Inshallah, let's hope so. Dr. Saab, you talked about narratives. Now let's talk about the political domain as well, the internal politics of Pakistan, and how there is a divisive politics that is going on, that has polarized the society as such, and this is due to the political uncertainty and whatever in the last few months. Now, Shehbaz Sharif Saab, while he addressed the pre-budget business conference yesterday, talked about streamlining Pakistan's economy, and he said it could not be done without political stability. Now, do the opposition parties or those who are in the opposition also understand Pakistan's plight as far as the economy is concerned? And for once, can they agree, in your point of view, on a charter of economy, on all the parties that are present in Pakistan coming together to form an economic consensus as to how to take the country forward?
Umar, that's a very important question again. And you're asking someone who started his work when I came to Pakistan with the PPP government, worked with the PMLN as well as with the PTI, and all other regional and smaller parties as well. Whether that be MQM or PMLQ, I've always helped everyone as a professional. um, Here's my view. On the larger game plan, we can all agree. There can be minor differences. PPP may not be too big on privatization, but on exports, no one can disagree. On training the youth to be the ITES future, there can be no disagreement. um, on the state bank to work independently, yet be responsible and answerable to the National Assembly of Pakistan or to the political leadership. There should be no two ways about it. For bureaucratic improvement, there should be no two ways about it. So what I'm trying to put to you is, yes, that can be. But then parties have their own constituencies. We must not forget. They have their own agendas. They have their own frameworks to sell to their constituents. On the broader side, I think the things that I've put in front of you, we should all agree. Today, there is a time where everyone should come together and support as a nation that IMF is the necessity, and then the other things that we have talked
And
about.
also, despite the differences between the parties that be, there needs to be now, and now is the time to have a consensus as to how we are going to move forward as one, as far as Pakistan's economy is concerned. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb Saab, former advisor, finance, and also associated with the finance ministry, as you yourself said, in all the different governments, and you understand Pakistan's economy through the different years much better than many others. Thank you very much to have joined us. Let's hope that we come out of this crisis not unscathed, but definitely with our heads held high. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns, ladies and gentlemen, India and that its accountability as far as the blasphemous statements on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are concerned. We've had an outcry amongst the Muslim countries, those that are extremely concerning for India as well, because there are a huge amount of remittances that come from those very countries. Will India move forward in a positive manner, or will it show a very diplomatic angle to all of that? And will the Muslim countries also react strongly if India does not stop its barbarities? More in the following report.
BJP leadership clearly expressing their venom for Indian Muslims as they consider them non-citizens, not worthy of deserving equal rights. BJP's national spokesperson's blasphemous remarks against Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, have once again exposed reprehensible campaign of saffronization in India. Pakistan has condemned in the strongest possible terms the highly derogatory remarks recently made by two senior officials of India's ruling party, BJP. According to a statement issued by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, these totally unacceptable remarks have not only deeply hurt the sentiments of people of Pakistan, but of billions of Muslims around the world. Taking to Twitter to condemn the incident, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif stated that India under Modi is trampling religious freedoms and persecuting Muslims. The world should take note and severely reprimand India. Saudi Arabia has joined a host of Muslim countries including Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Iran and Pakistan who have responded harshly to the comments made by the Hindu nationalist ruling party. The world must intervene to protect Muslims in India from an impending genocide at the hands of Hindutva-inspired Hindu zealots emboldened by the BJP RSS dispension at the helm.
Brigadier retired Haris Nawaz joins us online to talk more about India and illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the derogatory remarks, the blasphemous remarks that have been made by two BJP spokespersons. Thank you very much, Brigadier Saab, to have joined us. Brigadier Saab, when you look at the situation that has evolved since the blasphemous comments came and were part of news worldwide, and the reaction that has of course come from all the important Muslim countries, how do you foresee the reactions going forth? Do you feel there will be an end very soon to such statements, or do you feel these statements are going to be translated into some kind of a pressure on India?
Omar, the problem is that Indians, particularly this extremist murderer Modi, he is creating a lot of rift between the different religious communities between in India, and they do know how they are supporting RS vision, and they are all gundas there over there, and even and whatever they are doing, then all ultimately Muslims are arrested and their cases are registered against them. Now, what I feel, this is the first time, this is a good step that at least Muslims all over the world are talking against this all derogatory remarks, and then they are standing and they want to take action against India. But the problem is only statements are not needed. This is going to finish after 1 week, 10 days, 15 days. Some solid action need to be taken. And that solid action is that first, Pakistan, we always take a lead. And Pakistan already got the High Commissioner, we protested against it. But this is nothing that they have just cancelled their membership of these two idiots who have been doing all this in Indian officials. Their case should be registered. India must apologize. Their foreign office or their prime minister must apologize to Muslims all over the world, not only Indians, because it is affecting the whole Muslim community in the world. That's why we say, but they are not pushed because they know that at some time Muslims are going to keep quiet. I think best answer for this is that Pakistan should pass a very strong resolution from a National Assembly and Senate joint session, and that should go to the OIC. And from that platform, that resolution should go to the United Nations. The way Islamophobia was ultimately acknowledged, and then they passed on certain instructions, and the day is fixed to celebrate, to mark the day, to see how this Islamophobia should be finished and people should live like a good, uh, the best possible way. So now the answer is that again United Nations should talk out that this is not a freedom of speech. It is intentionally derogatory remarks. And they must know that the whole world, and particularly all Muslims, and for them, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has, I think, all love him. They don't accept any derogatory remarks, and they are there to sacrifice everything, whatever they have, including their life. That
All right,
message
now
should be conveyed.
Brigadier Saab, when you look at the Gulf countries, at the Middle East, their relationship with India has been quite strong in the last few years as well. We also saw post 2019, after the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A, many of the countries, despite Pakistan's objections, continued to have a very strong relationship with India and did not pass any comment. But now we see a total change in the environment as far as the Gulf countries or the Middle Eastern countries is concerned. The envoys in those countries have been summoned. There have been statements that have been taken out by all the important Muslim states. The OIC has taken out a statement as well. Pakistan, of course, has always led in the Muslim world as far as highlighting the anti-Muslim sentiment in India is concerned. Do you feel India will budge under the pressure, or do you feel this is just, more or less a tactic that is going to dilute within the next couple of days?
Actually, this is the first time, and it's very encouraging. You rightly said that all the Arab countries, mostly, including Saudi Arab, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, everybody has talked, and they have gone.
Iran?
Iran also, yes, and of course, Pakistan is already all the time they are there. So they have condemned that, but this is not required only. They have to get together and ask India to apologize from the Muslims, not only Indian, all of the Muslims, because they hurt the feelings of all Muslims in the world. And after that, they should go to the United Nations and again pass out that nobody should talk about any religion. The way we respect, we have never talked about Hinduism or Christianity or Buddhism, whatever it is. Likewise, it should be passed by United Nations that it's not part of freedom of speech. It is intentionally hurting the feelings of any religion against they talk about such things. That is more attempt because after 10 days, 15 things are going to be diluted. I do agree with you. And then India is intentionally doing it. India is intentionally insulting Muslims. And there are applications in the court where they've gone and they say that the Indian Hindus extremists are going to mass slaughtering of Muslims, genocide of Muslims, and that is very dangerous. And that is what exactly they are doing it. Even the Jumaat Ulama Hind, Maulana Mahmood, he has said, how it is possible that you are threatening the whole Muslim community, that they are going to be wiped out? And then their nationalist leaders are asking, please get weapons, get ready, and we are going to get killed or we are going to kill Muslims. So these are the three, and that no action is taking place. To just remove them from the party is not an action. Some concrete
But
action, visible action.
Brigadier Saab, herein lies the dichotomy. The whole principle or ideology of the BJP's government is on this RSS, the RSS that is always a pro-Hindu and anti-minority, especially anti-Muslim community, or how should I say, sect, or maybe even more. The fact remains that if you remove, as you yourself said, this anti-Muslim or anti-minority element from the BJP, will it also not take away all their power that they have over the Hindu community or the Hindu majority in India? Will BJP take this risk?
This is the issue. That's the problem, because the militant wing which they have and the extremist element that can be utilized against the Sikhs, Muslims, or even their own minority like Dalits. So that is why they are not doing action. Mina Modi is just quiet. He is not speaking out. That means the government is supporting. I think at least they should tell those idiots to stop doing all these things. Learn to live like all best inter-harmony faith and inter-religion, whatever you talk. And India was known as for secularism. But I think the day 2014 Narendra Modi has come, it is hell for all minorities. And nobody there to tell the India that what are you doing, because USA need them, European Union need them, and United Nations is totally controlled by a few big powers, and they can't go against them. So this is the problem, and I think if all we Muslims stand at united, I can assure you, everybody in the world will understand. And the way first I have seen it is very encouraging that most of the Muslim countries, Arab countries, they have really spoken against this Indian action. And the only one voice, if it is this, is that India has to apologize from all Muslims,
But
because
that
they've
is a
heard.
huge question, isn't it? That isn't a huge question. Will India apologize? We'll only wait and see how that goes. Thank you very much, Brigadier Haris Nawaz Saab, to have joined us. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments. Take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.